Welcome to this week's OK at Work with myself, Sarah Sawyer, and my colleague, Russell Berger, attorneys at Offit Kurman. And today we are talking about different ways to incentivize and compensate employees. So I know I've been getting a lot of questions from clients around ways to incentivize their employees or deal with some of the issues that they're dealing with right now with inflation. So I know a lot of employees are going to their employers and saying, hey, it's costing me twice as much to drive to work as it used to. What can you do about that? Or, there's different things with inflation that are happening. And really the way that you deal with that can really kind of set a precedent moving forward. There can be costs associated with that through payroll. So what are some things that employers should consider when they're answering questions like that from employees or looking for ways to compensate them?
Yeah, so the first point I want to make is that I think for purposes of this conversation, we are talking about additional payments. Obviously, we've talked before about non-monetary options, but if you cross that bridge into, yeah, you know what, I do think I need to pay more money. Inflation's too high. There's no way around this. One of the first considerations is, well, do I give everyone a raise, or do I find bonuses or stipends or other ways to do it? And the one of the key points here is that if you give people raises, raises don't go backwards. So once you do that, you're kind of committed to doing that and keeping compensation at whatever level you've raised to. And again, that's probably an across the board thing too throughout your company. You can't even just do raises for new hires without it affecting the compensation level of existing employees. So one of the things that we're starting to see a little bit more of is bonuses or stipends or things that you don't necessarily have to even run through payroll. If it's gas stipends, or cell phone or work from home stipends of some kind. So we're starting to see a little bit more of that, where it can be a temporary thing, and you can limit some of the tax liability associated with it as well.
Yeah, and it's not that if you increase a salary, there are possible ways to go backwards, but really not ones that are going to be very favorable to you or the momentum of your employees, for sure. And I've seen this also with types of compensation or benefits, let's say, that also you might want to recoup at some point. So I've seen it with employers who want to offer some kind of money to employees to do some type of education or training that's not required for their job, but would be helpful. Or there's different things that they might want or to pay for that might be conditioned on retention, right? So like a moving stipend tied to retention or things. But if you bake that into compensation, into what they're being paid, you can't recoup that in the same way either. So when you think about what your goals are with what type of benefits you're providing, it's like, really the bottom line is anything tied to salary or your hourly rate. I mean, that's really rigid and fixed. Other types of benefits can be, depending on how you offer them, and there's some nuance there, as there is with everything we talk about on OK at Work, that can be more flexibility depending on what type of benefit there is, and depending on the parameters you put on it, as opposed to tying it to the exact work that people are doing. Because if you're tying it to the work that they're doing, you owe them that money for the work that they did. So that's another thing to consider as well.
Yeah, and another wrinkle to this too is just with changing economic conditions, if you have bonuses that are tied to certain financial performances, folks might not be able to reach them at this point because the economy is poor, or that sector of the economy is struggling. But you still want to incentivize folks for the second half of the year. So it may make sense to kind of recast, reevaluate, have special part year bonuses, or change some of what you do. Or at least to revisit your options with respect to that, because you still want to keep people incentivized.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways to get creative, but as we've talked about on here before, there's a lot of landmines as it relates to any type of benefit or compensation. So definitely don't want to shy away from it, because they can be really useful tools, like the gas stipend of 2022 for, you know, the increase in the gas rates, or, you know, there's a lot of different ways it can be really effective. So I wouldn't say shy away from it and just try to stick to something basic. But if you are going to explore these different creative ways to really explore it and make sure that you're doing it in the right way and not opening up yourself to any liability or unnecessary taxes or things like that. So something to keep in mind.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, do it in a way that makes sense for your business today, makes sense for your business 2 or 3 years from now, and makes sense to your employees as well.
Well, thank you, Russell. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Sarah.